Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Expert to Authority show. This is the show for coaches, speakers, and trainers who want to grow their businesses while making an impact in the world. And today we are talking about a great topic, which is the undeniable offer. How can you actually find the right pricing of your offer? How can you find how much your time is worth? All these kind of questions, this is what we are going to explore today. And my guest today, she's a renowned business growth strategist and the driving force behind the Launch Lab, which is a powerhouse program dedicated to empowering women entrepreneurs. She has a proven track record of success, and she specializes in guiding former corporate leaders in how to make money, meaning, and impact as entrepreneurs in coaching or consulting. She's also the host of the Life After Corporate podcast, which I've been interviewed on. So I'll put the link also in the show notes so then you can see that episode on our podcast, and the Life After Corporate digital membership program. So please welcome Deb Boulanger. Deb, good to see you here.
Good to see you again, Simone. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Right, round two, round
Round
two.
two, I love it.
On your show, we talked about the power of webinars and how to sell effectively. So the link is in the show notes. Make sure everyone after this interview you check that episode and also you subscribe to that show. But today we are talking about the undeniable offer. And the first question that I have for you is what made you become so passionate about creating undeniable offer, and how did the undeniable offer framework was born?
Yeah, it really was born in my corporate career. I don't know that we ever talked about this, but it was my job to find new market opportunities and launch new products, service offerings for the company I was working for in corporate. And so it was just in my DNA to spot new patterns and what's the new problem now and what is that offer that people will pay, 5 or 6 figures for. And so when I left corporate and I started working with women entrepreneurs, there was this gap in the market. They didn't know how to package their services. It was like, well, I'll just take what I did in corporate and I'll sell that as a fractional CXO. And so the undeniable offer framework came about because also things have been shaken up, especially all over the world, but especially in the US. So what you did launch your business on originally, that original foundation might no longer be working. So the undeniable offer is a combination of what's the new problem now? What is that urgent offer that people can't say no to, that is scalable, and is a 6-figure offer? And then how do you fuel that with an unshakable sales system that's powered by something I call ROA? So yeah, it was kind of a translation of what I did in corporate, but fine tuning that for the entrepreneurial world.
I love it. Let's zoom out on what are the elements, and then we're going to zoom in the ROA piece because it's something that I've never heard before. So, what are the different elements of the undeniable offer? So then, if someone is interested or is listening, they can just visualize. It's like, okay, how do I piece this together?
Yeah, so many times we think about our business in a vacuum. And it's like we're creative. If you weren't creative, you wouldn't have chosen entrepreneurship. And so we have a million ideas that we're enamored with, and we tend to package them up and then try to sell them and then get really disappointed when no one wants to buy them, right? So we're always evolving and changing as entrepreneurs. The outside world is always evolving and changing. People's needs are evolving and changing. Um, you know, 5 years ago, we were talking about how to lead in a remote work environment. 3 years ago, we were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're not talking about any of those things right now. So an undeniable offer is what is the new problem now that your ideal clients are trying to solve that is a pressing problem for them to solve. It's an expensive problem to continue, and it's an undeniable fact that they need a solution. And so that is the basic foundation of an undeniable offer. Now, along with that, you have to be smart. And if it's you're selling, how do you actually make that saleable and scalable? And so part of it is understanding how people want to consume it, and also how you can leverage your time to maximum capacity and to maximum revenue without burning out. And for some people, that might mean adding more people to their bench. For others, it's doing one-to-many offers, which I know you and I are very happy about offering.
Big fan of one-to-many
Big
offers.
fan of one-to-many offers. Yeah, it's leverage, right? It's leverage, it's scalable, and maybe ultimately saleable. So that's kind of the basic foundation of the undeniable offer. And then part of that is the sales system that you need to put in place that's really a rhythm for you and a rhythm for your business. Before we hit record, you were talking about I was speaking here, I was speaking there in, June, July, August. Well, that's what we do. It's that visibility strategy. You can't be invisible and discoverable at the same time. So it's an undeniable offer that's inherently scalable, and a sales system that supports your visibility, that creates a rhythm and reliable revenue for your business.
Oh, I love it. And there are going to be some links in the show notes. So for anyone that wants to go deeper in this model and framework, then Deb has some resources. So check them out in the show notes while we are going through this interview because you can see them straight away. I want to zoom in one part, which is the ROA. That's
Yeah.
what I really want to focus this conversation about because while we were having this just a quick chat before recording this interview, you mentioned the concept, and I was like, "What is that?" Never heard about that before. Normally, I know about ROI, right? Return on investment. So, let's start with what is the ROA and what is the difference between ROA and ROI?
Yeah. So it came about in about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And I was putting together a webinar. Actually, I think it was a 5-day live launch. And I was working with a copywriter, and I was talking about pricing. We were trying to nail the pricing equation. And I said, it's not return on investment, because not everything that people sell has a quick ROI. And I said, it's really more about the return on advantage to the client. And when I said return on advantage, we both went, ooh, that's interesting. And so that's how, it first came about. But it's helpful because there's a lot of mistakes that people fall into when they think about pricing. So the first thing they think is, well, what is an hour of my time worth? That's the trap that most coaches and consultants fall into, right? Should I be charging 250 an hour or 400 an hour? And, I always say no one's buying an hour of your time. And we don't want to charge by the hour, because then, people are looking at their watches and saying, well, what have you done for me lately? And they evaluate you by how much time you put into it. But the second reason why that's not great is you spent decades acquiring the expertise that you now have, and you may be able to deliver a solution in an hour, but you spent decades assimilating all of that talent, that information, those skills to be able to deliver that in an hour. And so that's not an equitable return on value. The second mistake is that what can they afford? Right? So getting your head in your customer's wallet and starting to wonder, well, are they going to be able to afford this? Should I discount this? It's like the whole preemptive discount. Let me lower my price before they even object, right?
Yes, I'm telling you, like you already make a decision for them without even them saying, no, I can't, or not for me.
Yeah, and that's, it's all tied to our self-esteem and sense of self-worth, and no one's buying your self-esteem. So, and the third one is, well, let me charge what my competition charges, because then I'll be right in line. And then you just become another vanilla solution on the assembly line, and there's no real differentiation. So what we want to do in return on advantage is, you really do want to think up that high 5-figure, 6-figure offer. What would, especially as a consultant, what is that? You can sell one person $100,000 offer, or sell, 10 people a $10,000 offer, or 100 people a $1,000 offer. And when you first get started, you just don't have that many people in your ecosystem. So what is that return on advantage? And the return on advantage is There's a formula. It's the cost of inaction. So what happens to your client the longer a problem continues? There's a cost of them not fixing it. And then what is the value of change? So what is on the other side of what you can deliver? And what is the value of that to your ideal client in their mind, in their on their terms, right? So we can't determine this for them. This is why being really good at sales and having a good sales script and a good sales process is so important. So that's ROA. It's the cost of inaction, COI, times the value of change over time.
Hmm.
And over time, so if we think of an example, you're a career coach and you help someone get a promotion. And I had a client once who every single client she worked with got an additional 6 figures in compensation. Well, the immediate value is I got another 6 figures in compensation. The value of that over time to that individual, if that's in restricted stock units that increase in value over time, or a bonus that's a percentage of salary that also increases over time. But more importantly is the confidence in being able to negotiate and advocate for yourself.
That's such a great distinction. And I think, part of sales, as you mentioned, this is sales psychology. That's why it's so important becoming good at selling, because it is part of sales, understanding what is the cost of inaction and what is the value. But I never seen that put together in a formula in like this, because actually that number can be quantifiable. So now your offer or your pricing now makes sense in comparison, in contrast with that number, which is, as you mentioned, is not given by you, it's given by your clients during that call. And before we go deeper, I'd love to ask you, did you always approach your business in this way? Because, I know you changed from like a corporate career to then doing business mentoring, business consulting. So did you always think in this way when you set up your coaching or consulting business, or did it took a while for you to come to terms with this reality and selling in this way?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it took me a while because I fell into the reason why I know those traps so well is because I fell into them, right? It was like, well, what am I worth? And I remember walking down the street one day, remembering the position I held in corporate, remembering the salary I used to earn, remembering the bonuses, the stock units. And I was like, wait a minute, that is my value. Like, they are hiring me for a very small fraction of what I was compensated on. So that, number one, was a small shift in mindset. And then once you start working with people and you start getting the testimonials and they're saying how much they shifted and what that meant to them. And then I started working with clients who doubled their revenue in a year. They earned another 100,000. So maybe they were at 100 and they got to 200. They were at 200, they got to 400. It's like, wow. So I think sometimes our awareness isn't necessarily tuned into our own value, but it did click for me afterwards. And so I thought, well, if I could price my services at 10% of the value of change, of the return on advantage over time, and let's say that time is 12 months, because we don't track clients for much longer than that unless they stay with us for multiple years. If I can charge 10% of the value, the return on advantage, then that seems fair.
It is. It is. And that's a great way to actually put numbers in something which can be quite abstract, because that's often the problem. Like in this industry, we're going to go into the conversation around identity and confidence because it's a big part of it. It's a big part
Mm.
of this whole equation. But I remember even when I started my business, no, at the beginning of this conversation, you're like, well, definitely it's true for women. I can say it's true for men as well. Because
Yeah,
when I started, I transitioned from catering. So my benchmark when I started my business was a salary as a waiter or restaurants manager, which they don't go. You don't get stock options. You don't get a six-figure salary. You never see this kind of thing. If you get 40,000 a year, you are lucky. You're already in the top end, right? In
yeah,
particular, in Europe. In the US, salaries are different, tips are different. But in Europe, if you make 30,000 a year, you are already at a managerial level. If you're a waiter, you make 12,000, 15,000 a year. So we're talking about very small numbers. And so that was my frame of reference. So for me, when I
Wow.
had my first coaching clients, going into it, I went with the hourly rate. And so I started
Yeah.
charging I think at first client I charged £25 an hour, which is about $30 an hour. And for me, coming from a £12 an hour, it was double my waiter rate. So I made it, right? And then you start understanding after a while the value that you really provide. And so I went into like 100 an hour, 200 an hour, then 500 an hour, but my thinking was still in hourly rate. And it took me a few years to make that transition to think about, no, stop thinking about hourly rate because we are trained to think about hourly salary. We are trained to think, we are conditioned to think in that way. We're not conditioned to think in value. And that's also sometimes why it's difficult to have the confidence to find that value. So, what's your solution for that in terms of, because it's an identity shift at that point, it's a complete mindset, you're seeing the world in a completely different way. How do you advise
Yeah.
someone to make that transition or to make that change?
Yeah. Usually it takes help. Right. So the first thing is, it's hard to separate yourself from your business as a solopreneur when you're first getting started. Right. And my mother-in-law used to say, wherever you go, there you are. So whatever whatever psychology you suffered from growing up, whatever conditioning that you had or whatever your experience was in your last career, and those messages are subconsciously embedded in your psychology. And most of them work against you. There are very few that actually work for you. Those are the ones that typically we've rewired, or the mindset shifts that we've had to make. And so the first thing is, like, don't believe anything you think, right? So to become aware of what is that talk track. And it's a huge identity shift from corporate to entrepreneurship, because in corporate, you did have the salary, which is a safety blanket. You had salespeople, marketing department, finance, HR, all of that. Now suddenly you're wearing all the hats. And success is measured in different ways. You had different goals, different KPIs. You arrived at the office. For me, it's like my schedule was already set for me. I just went through the motions of going through what I needed to go through and achieving the goals I needed to achieve. And so the identity shift is huge, because it's like the rug is pulled out from underneath you. You have none of those frameworks. And so that's when doubt starts to seep in, and the inner talk track of imposter syndrome, or who are you? And it's true. I've talked to so many, even though I work predominantly with women, I've talked to so many men. I know it's the same for everyone. It's like, who are you to charge that much? So I had good mentors when I first got started. And the advice I was given is, you don't sell anything for less than $2,500 or $3,000. And that was my very first coaching package. And once I aligned myself behind that price point, which is a key point as well, you have to have alignment. You can't quote a price that you don't believe you're worth.
That's exactly why, like, that was a question that was coming to my mind because one thing is to say someone else telling you. I mean, probably you've seen this many times, either your peers or other clients that you serve. Oh, you should charge more, right? But the fact that someone tells you a number to charge doesn't mean that you embody that number, right?
That's right. And so I tell my clients, get as close as you can align behind. And then in every sales conversation, inch it up until it feels uncomfortable, or inch it up until someone says no, because no one can tell you what you can charge. You have to feel that value inside. And so the purpose of ROA is to kind of take it away from you and objectify the value of the service that you're delivering, so that you can see what it's worth to someone else. And that gives you this increased confidence. And it's like, oh yeah, this is going to make a huge change in someone's life, or in some company's revenue or success.
There is, I think, a common pattern that I've seen, and let me know if you've seen it as well, also in your clients. But it feels like that, or maybe that happened to you as well, when you transition from one role to another, or in this case, from one career completely to another, or from corporate to solo, then it's almost like you forget everything you've done before. It feels
Yes.
like someone starts completely from zero and they're like, whatever I've done for the past 30 years, 20 years is worth nothing. Like, I'm starting new, I'm new. What have you experienced that? And what do you say to clients actually that actually are going through it? Because it's very common.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's the very first step we go through in the launch lab is what is your life story? And it's so true, especially if you're a newly credentialed coach. It's like, now I'm a coach. I was this, now I'm a coach. And there's this hard line of that's over and now I'm going this way. But the true differentiator, because there's no differentiation with coaching, everyone calls themselves an executive coach, a career coach, a leadership coach. How do you differentiate yourself? You differentiate yourself with that lifetime of experience. And I've had people in the launch lab where halfway through the launch lab, we found out that, oh my God, you were a dancer on Broadway. And now you're a CPA and you're working with I get chills when I tell these stories. Um, and so it goes from, not knowing your numbers and being scary and negative to dancing with numbers and building a whole business around the choreography of your financials. And so that's where branding magic starts to happen, is when you embrace all of you. And yeah, now I'm working with someone who was a business advisor, someone who had been great in sales, set up call centers, all of this. And then she became an astrologer. And so for the last few years before joining the Launch Lab, she was focused on her astrology practice. Well, now the world is opening up to bringing in some metaphysical characteristics into leadership. And so now you can blend executive coaching and leadership with astrology. And that's where the magic happens, not with the hard line of I was this, now I'm that.
Yeah, I love this because when really someone understands this concept is everyone is watching, listening right now. When you embrace that, the fact that you can integrate who you are and who you have been and the past careers, no one can take away what you've done from you. But at the same time, it requires often someone else to remind you that, or a process to go through that, because it's a human nature. Like it's not your fault, really. Like it's human nature to see something new, new person, new shift, new identity, and also people that make these career transitions, often something big happen in their life.
Yes.
There's been something big that required a transition, like a shift in who they are, and that's why also they decided maybe to start a business, quit their corporate job. And the question I have for you, and sometimes that's why I found difficult also to navigate for people, is you're already transitioning from an old identity to a new identity. On top of that, you need to learn sales. You need to learn marketing. You need to
Yeah.
learn how to make your undeniable offers. You need to learn all these things, right? It can be quite overwhelming. It can be quite a lot. Where do
Yeah.
you find for people to say, okay, if you have to start somewhere, start here. What's your starting point?
You don't have a business until you have a client. So it's sales. You have to know how to sell. You have to have that offer and know how to make it.
That's
All the
good.
marketing in the world is not going to overcome sales skills. And people hide behind that, right? So they hide behind social media. And I think that's why you and I share this passion for speaking. Because for me, being an introvert, the whole sales thing felt a little uncomfortable at first. But I love teaching. I was also a teacher in my first career. When I graduated from university, my first career was teaching. So that's still inside of me. And that's such a huge passion. So webinars and workshops were a natural segue for me to start selling my services, because I was being of service and I was in the front of the room. Because if you put me in a room and I'm not the speaker, I'm not in front of the room, then I'm going to meet like two people. I'm like so shy, right? Not so much anymore. I mean, I've overcome that, but my basic tendency from childhood is to be shy and sit in the back of the room.
And then from there, uh, so what made for you, what helped you made this shift from the back of the room to the front of the room? Because you said something that I love to expand on. which is people. I think there are two things that came up in just the short sentence that you said. One is more people hide behind social media.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot to expand on that first. And then the second part is going to be then what helped you make the shift from back on the room to front of the room. But let's start with first the hiding behind social media. Expand on that and why do you think that happens?
Because we're scared and it's easy, right? So I call it fake progress. I've got a label for everything, Simone.
I love you thinking frameworks. I love this.
So fake progress. Fake progress is doing things that you believe will grow your business. It feels like you're working on your business, but you're not doing anything that's actually moving the needle. So for me, and yes, I was in crisis. I was getting a divorce. I hit burnout in my career and decided to leave. I was now a single mom of a 12-year-old son, and I was hitting menopause from a health perspective, and my mother's health was declining. Like all this was going on in my life at the same
All at
time,
once.
all at once. Like so huge, like identity shift. I didn't do anything small, but I had, like Team Deb. I had a great uh, psychotherapist. I had a great trainer. I had a health coach. I was doing the whole thing from the inside out, right? So, what was the question?
Yeah, the question was what the false progress.
Oh yeah,
False
fake
progress.
progress. So
Fake
why are we
progress.
hiding behind social media? So it was easy for me to write about everything that was going on in my life at that time, right? So, and at that point, blogs were still very big 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So I was blogging and people loved my emails. People loved, reading the stories, but it wasn't getting me business. And it was when I got over the fear of delivering a webinar. And back in those days, we didn't have Zoom. It wasn't video. It was like instant teleseminar. So I want you to know, like, this this
Yeah.
technology is really great, but we used to have phone lines, what set sharing a screen, and that was a webinar. And my very first one, I was petrified. And I remember pasting photographs of all of my colleagues who were in my mastermind program at the time that I was in, all around me, so I could see their faces, because it's not like Zoom. I couldn't see faces on the screen. And when I did that and people signed up for my program at that time, it was a group program, was the first thing I launched. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I kept joining. So I joined a professional network that had women leaders in it. And I noticed that a lot of the women in that group were starting businesses. And so I offered to do a webinar. And this is old days, which I'm sure you remember too. Like
Yeah.
2018, you could do a webinar and get 500 people to sign up for it.
Yep.
And that's what happened. 500 people signed up for that webinar. 200 actually showed up. 68 people asked for a conversation. And I had to rank the applications for the conversation. And I closed 20 clients and filled my program. And that was a 6-figure lead stream for me. And that's when the light bulb went on. That's like, oh, speaking equals clients, and I need clients to make revenue to survive as a single mom and put my kid through school. So it became something that I said, well, if I could do this for this organization, if I join 3 other organizations, and this is where the sales system comes in, because this is the system that you and I practice, is if I can give that talk for 3 or 4 other organizations, then I can have 3 or 4 6-figure lead streams. And
Yeah.
that's all it took.
And
And social media didn't do anything.
that's what has changed. And I think that there is something which is um, I call our safe place, right? I've got labels to it. That's why we think the same. I love
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I love doing interviews with you because uh, there is everyone has a comfort zone depending on what the default to that makes them feel safe. In this case, productive but not moving forward. So, for example, for me was to create new offers. Like I would just create new offers. Now, my problem is that I needed more people to come to my webinars. But my default was let's create a new offer instead of actually solving my marketing problem, getting more people to the webinar.
Yeah.
And there's some for some people is creating content on social media. Doesn't move the needle, but makes me feel busy and productive. For
Right.
other people might be, let me go to a lot of networking events, attend, not do anything with that, makes me feel busy, productive, but doesn't move the needle. So I think that for everyone listening, be aware about where your comfort zone is, because often the thing that you really need to work on is not within your comfort zone because you're already good at that. It's natural for you to do that.
Yeah.
And then, so if for a lot of people might be stretching themselves into creating webinars, stretching themselves into going into speaking and to actually get in front of people and sell the damn thing that you have created. Right?
Yeah.
That that's such a powerful concept for people to embrace because once they have it and they focus on let me get in front of people, then their
Yeah.
business shifts. Is there something else
Yeah.
you would like to expand on this or that you would like to mention on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, then you can turn it into a system. So what I teach my clients is, 3-2-1. So 3 speaking engagements a month, at least 2 of those on other people's platforms. 2 pieces of high value content. And I think in this, we could have a whole nother interview about content and AI and what's happening with resonance and magnetic messaging in this time period that we're in. But just getting in front of the right audience and um yeah, just one powerful talk that converts, that you can rinse and repeat. And people make it way too complicated. And while you and I both know there are a lot of intricacies in delivering a talk that actually converts, because left to your own devices, you're going to end up over coaching, over teaching, leaving the audience overwhelmed, not taking any action. All of these, the psychology of making an offer in a webinar is also important too. But yeah, it's the thing that feels scary, that's not comfortable, that actually delivers the biggest results. And it's not tweaking your website for the 20th time.
Oh my God, don't get me started. I need to work on a new website. How many people look at it? No one. Great.
My website was out of date for 8 years until people started telling me, "Oh, I went to your website," and I got this, ooh, like cringe in my belly. Then I said, "Oh, I really should update it." But, it was LinkedIn. I mean, as long as your LinkedIn profile is up to date and everything, you can put up a website that's good, but it's what you do with your voice, it's what you do with your message, and most messaging is boring. And so spending time with creating compelling talk titles, compelling hooks to your social media, and always having a call to action to something.
Yeah, and that's where I feel for anyone that is watching or listening, if you're at the beginning in this transition period, you can feel quite a lot, and the reality is it is a lot. That's why a
Yeah.
lot of people actually don't make it. That's why a lot of people go back to their corporate job or go back to their career because it is a lot. It is learning business. It is learning how business work. It is managing your business. It is running your business. It is applying a completely different level of identity and mindset. And that's why being part of a container is crucial because it's very, I probably know 1 over 1,000 people that have managed to have done it on their own. And most of the time they already had those skills because they acquire them through their corporate career or through other businesses, or they're just a one unicorn that happens every now and then. But for the majority of people, I needed a container and it takes time because
Yeah.
now you're learning different skills. So for anyone that wants to connect with you, like wants to learn how they can work with you or some of the resources, where's the best way? What are the website? Give us all the goodies. Give us all the goodies.
Yeah. Well, actually, everything is on lifeaftercorporate.com. Everything. So our containers, our paid services, our pricing calculator and pricing blueprint for coaches and consultants, which you can download for free. We also have some micro trainings there. So lifeaftercorporate.com. And also subscribe to the podcast, which is on all major streaming platforms of Life After Corporate. And if you get excited about what you hear and you'd like to join our digital membership community, that's a really great container to meet other entrepreneurs who are also just starting out.
That's brilliant. So lifeaftercorporate.com, the links of the podcast and the website, and also Deborah's social media links as well. They are in the show notes or the description. So make sure you scroll down and get them right away. Don't procrastinate on this right now. Things are fresh from the interview. So get deeper into the resources because you, particularly the pricing calculator, as a starting point. So then you can really visualize the concept of ROA and the conversation that we had today. Deborah, I can talk with you for hours. I think like our half an hour interviews, often we finish them and we say, we need 2 hours to geek out on these things. So thank you for being on the show. I'd love to have you back at some point to maybe like talk something other deeper modalities of business.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, let's continue the conversation. I'd love to have you back on Life After Corporate as well.
Yeah, we can do like an annual an annual catch up and see what has changed and what updates have been
Yeah,
happening. All right,
exactly.
everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. A couple of things. If you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe already. And second, leave us a review. Reviews are the lifeblood of every show. They're good for the guests, they're good for the show, and they're good for my ego. So make sure you give that 5-star review. And also remember, until next time, that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.